I love Listen. I love it in part because Cantor Doug's theological prayer song articulates our Jewish belief that we are never really alone because God is always there with us. And I also love Listen because when we sing it, so many of us feel compelled to put our arms around each other and draw others close, making manifest a revolutionary, radical notion, a central idea of Shema, namely, Adonai Echad, that we are one. Often translated as God is one, Adonai Echad means so much more. When we say Adonai Echad, we are declaring that the Holy One is that which was, is, and will be forevermore. Adonai Echad, like Einstein's elusive unity principle, declares that existence and everything in it is a single unified whole, part of a oneness that transcends time and space, eye shape and skin color, economic means and gender identity, political views, or national origin. We are part of a single tapestry of existence in which everyone is deserving of the same kavod, respect, and chesed, kindness, because we all are one. If only people actually treated each other that way. Ironically, you won't believe where I observed how far we have strayed from that ideal of Adonai Echad. It was in Jerusalem, and then again here in Calabasas. We got to talk. It was in July that my wife and I were in Israel. One day, Michelle was walking across the Jerusalem light rail train tracks, notably toward the Museum of the Scene, a wonderful museum dedicated to the ideals of coexistence and connection, when she passed a rather large rally against the light rail train. The crowd, passionate and boisterous, was exercising its democratic right to protest. That's when it happened. One protester noticed Michelle walking nearby and apparently judging her to be part of the problem. The man spit on her. Yeah, a Jew spit on my wife, another Jew. An ultra-Orthodox Jew who rises up each morning to sing Adonai Echad and lays down at night, each night, also singing Adonai Echad, who in one moment declares that we are all part of God's oneness, yet in the other, by spitting on someone, denies that she is part of that oneness. Oh, how upset I became. I wanted to rail against the ultra-Orthodox, wrapping them all up as one single horrible entity and dismissing them all as a bunch of dangerous religious nutcases who represent everything that we, the enlightened, reject. But I was in Jerusalem, studying at the Shalom Hartman Institute with an interdenominational gathering of rabbis from Reform to ultra-Orthodox. We were exploring deep questions about the nature of Israel's existence in the 21st century and beyond. A diverse group of leading scholars throughout the world, Palestinian thinkers among them, attempted to understand the growing gap between the many subgroups that comprise Israel. We had been reading a speech from former Israeli President Reuven Rivlin about Israel descending into a kind of tribalism, becoming a country composed of separate tribes, secular, Jewish nationalist, Arab, ultra-Orthodox. Each tribe had its own educational system to indoctrinate its young and not so young toward a vision that privileges their way of seeing the present and increasingly denies the validity of any other vision. This tribalism is fostering disconnect and disgust between the tribes that results in acts of hatred, including what happened to my wife, Michelle, when she was spit on by a member of one tribe because she came from outside his tribe. I wanted to rant against the ultra-Orthodox community's hypocritical piousness. Until I got back to Calabasas, led services, and then received a late August call from congregant Jacob Pofsky. Jacob, a college student, shared in a kind but direct way his deep discomfort about a comment I made during services that denigrated Orthodox Jews. I had said that they were all undermining our pluralistic Jewish rights and values in Israel and around the world. Now Jacob, who is equally comfortable at home at Congregation Orami and at his Orthodox Jewish high school Shalhevet, was hurt that our Orami community that promotes inclusion would also promulgate ideas that denigrated other people, Jews even, like the Orthodox classmates at whose houses he shared meals, shot hoops, and spent the night. Jacob was dismayed that his rabbi would say or even think such a thing. And guess what? He was right. My words and the agreement mumbled by those in attendance at the service was in conflict with our most cherished values. Jacob engaged appropriately in tochacha, Leviticus chapter 19's dictate to clearly, though kindly, admonish those closest to us when they stumble from the path of life-affirming connectedness, the path that Torah prescribes. Jacob, who's now back at Wesleyan University back east playing some mean basketball, watch for that kid, he's going to go far, reminded me that sloppy speech and unexamined intolerance threatens to push us into a tribalism that will divide us all, both over there in Israel, but also back here in the United States. He reminded me that talking about uncomfortable subjects, like disagreements and words that hurt us, are sometimes a necessary part of maintaining relationships and building community. In moments of weakness, it is easy to want to deride those who infringe upon our values and vision for the world. The challenge instead is to follow Jacob's example, to argue with others' ideas without denying their humanity, or our shared responsibility to create an embracing society, or of building one nation under God. How might we avoid tribalism and become one people? I choose derech ahava, the path of love. How many of you knew that Judaism has a love holiday? Tu B'Av. No, not Tu B'Shvat. That's the tree holiday. Tu B'Av. No, not Tisha B'Av. That commemorates the destruction of the Jerusalem temples. Not so happy. Tu B'Av. Tu B'Av is an ancient biblical festival, reborn as a kind of Jewish Valentine's Day, all hearts and flowers in pursuit of romance. But in the Talmud, we discover that Tu B'Av began as a hopeful response to a dangerous inflection point in Jewish history. In an obscure tale from the biblical book of Judges, we learn about a conflict among the Israelites when the tribe of Benjamin battled against the other tribes. Following that conflict, the other tribes vowed never to marry any of their daughters to any of the 600 surviving Benjaminite males. Won't marry each other? Talk about toxic tribalism. We wouldn't act that way, right? In fact, I fear that our American society and our Jewish community here too are moving just in that direction, descending into a tribalism potentially as toxic as what was and what is happening in Israel. We Americans and we Jews are separating into two tribes, one of Democrats and one of Republicans, pushed to the extremes by extremists on both sides. Each tribe has its own indoctrinating information sources on cable, and each has its own biased media outlets. And each tribe thrives as social media algorithms feed its adherents separate streams of stories tailored to embolden their predilections, further dividing us. It's happening all over America. And it's even happening here at ORME. I noticed recently that people are resisting getting together with certain others because their political views feel so uncomfortable. How long will this continue before we, like the Benjaminites, are forbidden to marry? Come on. Would you cringe if a relative married a person who strongly supported the other political party? I'm hearing people say this too. Maybe we're almost there. And before you blame the other political party for bringing us to this precipice, remember that they too blame you for this growing divisiveness. And while there are significant nation-defining disagreements between the parties and really within the parties on challenging issues, we are falling into the trap that believes there are only two separate paths forward. And that naive tribalism is endangering America, one of the few countries that for so long opened its arms widely to the Jews. And such attitudes are endangering our Jewish community too, including our own or Ami. In 25 hours at the Ne'ilah concluding service, we will again sound the shofar. The shofar, a ram's horn, serves as a soul-level wake-up call, reminding us that if we haven't lived our best lives, we got to get it together. Perhaps it also serves as a warning for our community and our nation that we are a month away from midterm elections, a political election cycle designed to push you and me and everyone here to the extremes, because it's in the best interest of our political parties and their fundraising PACs and super PACs too to play to those extremes, to create a kind of civil war between people who normally would agree upon much of the agenda. This internecine political warfare eclipses the many laws passed and the good works accomplished and that could be accomplished by thinking leaders on both sides. And it makes me sometimes wonder if we have arrived at the Book of Judges inflection point. So collectively, we have to decide. Will we push back against the pressure to perceive others as separate from us? Let's emulate what the ancient Israelites did when they reached that point with the Benjaminites. Even as the scars of the conflict were still fresh, the Israelite tribes chose connection over calamity, realizing that without marrying between the tribes, they were sentencing the Benjaminites, an entire tribe, to obliteration and breaking themselves up. So they relented. And we must too. Tu B'Av saved our people because on that day, the Benjaminites were invited to go out into the fields where they could meet and eventually marry the other Israelite women dancing there. Look, we can embrace tribalism or we can be one people. We can't do both. Our ancestors chose to pursue connection. Will we? Will we have the courage to dance in the fields with those whose ideas feel abhorrent to us? If we want to be one Jewish people, one nation under God, we must find a way to knit ourselves back together. It all begins with taking a risk to bridge the divide with kavod, respect, and chesed, kindness. That's just what I tried to do one of those other evenings in Jerusalem. Now, friends, I'm going to tell you a story that at first is going to make some of you uncomfortable. Breathe through the discomfort and trust me, okay? So it was after a long day of study. I sat down with Michelle for a quiet dinner at a favorite restaurant in Jerusalem's old train station. And I spotted a nice gentleman my age walking by. To my chagrin, he was wearing a hat bearing the words, "Let's go, Brandon." A reference to an incident when someone was being interviewed on the news and those gathered behind him began chanting, "F you, Biden. F you, Biden." The TV reporter, uncomfortably trying to lighten the moment, suggested they were saying, "Let's go, Brandon." It became a meme, shorthand for saying, "F you, Biden." Well, wouldn't you know it? That hat warmer sat down at the table directly in front of mine. I couldn't look anywhere without seeing what I felt was another example of the divisiveness plaguing our world. So you know me. I said, "Excuse me, sir. I see you're wearing a 'Let's Go Brandon' hat. We all know what that means. I'm wondering if you might remove it as we both eat dinner." My wife, Michelle, squirmed. His wife squirmed. And I could see he did not know quite what to do. "Don't get me wrong," I quickly explained. "You are entitled to your opinions. I honor your right to hold whatever beliefs you want. But I wouldn't wear or support anyone wearing FU paraphernalia about any president, prime minister, or any person really. And I'm wondering if you might honor that, at least during dinner." Now the man, a traditional Jew who needed to keep his head covered, paused and said, "Well, I don't have a kippah." And I replied, "Well, I happen to have an extra one in my backpack." And tentatively, I pulled it out. And to my joy, he took it, removed his hat, and put on my kippah. And we each ate dinner peacefully. Afterward, he walked over to return the kippah. He took my hand and shook it. He said, "When I saw the hat, I thought it was funny." Still holding his hand, I smiled and said, "I get it. But you're a Torah Jew and I'm a Torah Jew. And we both know that Torah envisions a world for our children and grandchildren characterized by kavod, respect, and chesed, kindness. I want to create a world like that for your grandchildren and mine. Don't you? With small kindnesses like this, perhaps we can do that. So thank you." He smiled, said goodbye, and that was that. A week that began with my wife getting spit on ended with a constructive encounter with someone whose ideas appeared in opposition to my own, until we reached across the table to find commonality and connection, knitting anew a sense of Adonai Echad. Look, it's not easy. I confess that in my own family, one of my brother's politics differs from my own. Yet Chuck unfailingly has urged me to talk to him, both about our common values and our divergent views for this country and our shared hopes for our kids and grandkids. Chuck, God bless him, consistently pushes us through the discomfort, believing in our mutual desire to have a world that creates opportunity for all. It's not easy. Yet we have discovered that by rising above the tribalism, we can preserve our relationship, our family, and perhaps our country too. Pirkei Avot, the sayings of our fathers, teaches, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor. We don't have to fix it all at once. It is an enormous, difficult task. V'lo ata ben chorin lihitbatel mimena. But we must begin the work. So I invite you all to choose a first step that resonates with you, which may just be talking and getting together, again, with people whose opinions differ from your own. Friends, the shofar comes to say, talk less and listen more. Live the best version that you can. And let's knit this country and world back together. The shofar is a symbol of that. The sounds of the shofar start whole, right? Tekiah. Then it breaks down. Shivarim. Then it utterly shatters. Truah. But listen, the shofar, symbolizing what we can do in our lives, repairs the brokenness, bringing it all together with another tekiah, and then, in an act of far-reaching repair, offers us the great tekiah gedolah. Nope, come to Ne'ilah concluding service at 5:15 tomorrow to hear that one. But like the shofar, we can repair ourselves, our country, and our world. So for this moment forward, when you hear the shofar, when you pull others close during listen, let these actions inspire you to work toward unity, so that one day we will become one world of kavod, respect, of chesed, kindness. And what a glorious day that will be. Amen.